finally escaped. And as I was walking down the street, it heard some laughter coming, and the dog turned, only to see some children with some rocks, and it looked like they were going to throw the rocks at a bird that was sitting on the tree. The dog got so angry when he saw that, and he went racing towards the children, growling, teeth bared, and the children were frightened and dropped the rock and ran into the forest. The bird came down to the dog and said, "I think you saved my life." "Ah, not to worry," said the dog. "It's okay." And the dog continued to walk. And the bird said, "You look a bit sad, or is something wrong?" He said, "No, I'm just very hungry. I'm very, very hungry." "Ah, I'll take care of that," said the bird. And the bird said, "Follow me." And the dog did. And they went to 2 bakeries. They went to 2 butcher shops. And the dog, after eating what the bird found for it, was satisfied. And so they decided to walk again on the street. And as they were walking, well, they were exchanging life stories and having quite a good time when all of a sudden the dog looked at the bird and said, "I feel a bit tired." "Oh, well, just lie down and go to sleep," said the bird. "I'll go up to the branch and I'll watch over you and make sure that nothing happens to you." "Well, that's very kind of you," said the dog. And right there in the middle of the street, the dog laid down and went to sleep. It was about an hour later, and the bird was looking and all of a sudden saw this wagon being pulled by 3 horses coming in the direction of the dog. The bird flew up to the driver and said to the driver, "You better go left or right, but don't continue to go straight because you're going to run over my friend the dog." "Ah, what do you know? What do you know? Get out of here," said the driver. And the driver then proceeded to have that horse and cart, or the horses and the cart, run right over the dog, killing the dog. The bird was just heartbroken and enraged at the same time. "You murderer! You murderer! You murdered my friend! You will pay for this! You will pay for this!" Now the cart had a covering on it, and the bird went under the cover and saw 2 barrels, and it started pecking, 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 pecking at the wood of those barrels. And pretty soon the wine that was in the barrels started to flow out. The driver felt that something was lighter or whatever. He thought something didn't feel right about the wagon. And so it got the horses to stop, and it went around to the back and saw that indeed the wine had flowed out of the barrels. "Oh, I have no luck. I have no luck," said the driver. "Ah, you say you have no luck. Huh? You murderer, you murderer. Watch this." And then the bird proceeded to go to the horses and one by one peck out its eyes. Oh, the driver was furious, absolutely furious at this. Took an axe, and the bird just hovered around the head of each of the horses. And the axe came, when it came down, the bird would just fly away. And one after the other, that driver killed the horses with its axe. "Oh, I have no luck, I have no luck," said the driver. You murderer, you murderer. You have no luck. Worse is to come." And the bird flew away. Well, the driver walked home and he was met by his wife, and his wife said, "Well, what's wrong?" He said, "Oh, I've had no luck today, no luck at all." "Well, bad luck has followed you because in the barn, there's nothing. All the thousands of birds have gathered and they're eating up everything that we have in that barn that can be eaten. There's nothing." The driver opened the door, looked in, and sure enough, there were thousands of birds, and that sparrow came out and says, "You murderer, you murderer. You haven't seen anything yet. You're going to die, die, die." Well, the driver just went into his house. He sat down. He just defeated, he felt. And all of a sudden he heard, And he looked, and there was the bird. A rage came into that driver. He picked up what was nearest him and just threw it at the window. Pain, the glass broke. The bird was untouched. And matter of fact, the bird flew into the house. That driver was in a rage. It picked up whatever he could. Just kept on throwing it at the bird, throwing it at destroying his own furniture, destroying the things that were in his home. But the bird all of a sudden flew close to the driver, and the driver picked the bird up from the air. I've got you now. I've got you now, he said to the bird. And the wife said, you're going to kill it? You're going to kill it, eh? You're going to kill it? Ah, better than that. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat it now. And he popped that bird into his mouth, started to eat. While that bird pecked the roof of the mouth, pecked the tongue. It was so uncomfortable. The driver opened his mouth a bit just for the head to come out. And then the driver said to his wife, kill that bird, get that axe and cut off its head, cut off its head. The wife went and got the axe, and she was sure that she could just slice off that head of the bird, eh? But all of a sudden, as she's bringing down the axe, the bird pecked the lip of the driver, causing immense pain. And the driver moved his head, and the axe went down into the head. Down it went into that driver's head. The force opened the mouth of the driver as he was falling down, and the bird flew out. You murderer, you murderer, you got what you deserved, you got what you deserve, said the bird. And then it flew away, and it was never seen again.
Great story, Susan. Great story. Let's see.
Thank you.
Yep. I see hands waving. That's like applause, applause, applause. There you go. There you go. So we're still just warming up with some creepy tales. And that was a good creepy tale all the way from Canada. Now we're going to get a creepy tale from Mr. David Thompson. The Dark Elves are dancing. David, tell
Okay,
us a story.
if you give me a moment, let me turn off the overhead. So I'll be,
Okay.
just give me a moment. All right. I'm here and I hope you're there. Hi. The story I'm going to bring is The Dark Elves Are Dancing. And I need to make an introduction here because this comes from Ireland. And you have the two forms of the Fae folk. You have the Sidhe, who are the bright, shining ones, who basically lived in harmony with humans. But then you had the Drow, the Dark Elves, who thought humans were nothing more than annoyance in their existence. So here we are. The Dark Elves are dancing. Oh, the Dark Elves are dancing and dancing and dancing. Oh, mortals, won't you come dance with them too? Ah, my friends, it was the end of the Great War, the end of what we call World War I. And there was a proud troop of Irish who were coming back to their homes, or at least the ones who survived. And they were led by the great Captain Ian McLeary. And Ian and the men, they talked and they marched home. They were going to march into their hometown. They were going to march into the village to great celebration because they all came back alive. And it was a good march. And on the way, they would sing and they would sing, no, it's a long way to Tipperary, Tipperary, I know. And they would walk and they would sing. And at night, they would just sit around a campfire and talk about their experiences, and remember the sad stories of their friends who did not come back, except in body bags. Oh, but it kept going, and they were happy. And people from the village would come out with their horses. We're not here. We're coming. We're coming. We're going to welcome you with everything we got. Just let you know. Just to let you know. And then, about 2 miles from the village, the clouds began to darken and darken and darken. Lightning in the distance. Boom, boom. Rumbling thunder. And then the rains came, great torrential rains, sweating them down, completely wetting them completely all the way through. And the lightning, boom, 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 and up and there. Oh, Captain, look up there. There's an old castle. Maybe we could get some shelter up there. So they all climbed as best they could through the sludge and the rain and the wind and the lightning and the thunder. They came up to the castle door, and torches lit, flickering, flickering. And the rain was not around them. They were not wet. They had dried out. And they banged on the door. Let us in, please. We need to shelter for the evening. Let us in, please. And the knocks continued until once the door slowly, quietly opened, and they stepped into a grand hall. And when they were in, the door went shut. Torches sprang into light, the flickering flames. And in the distance, you could barely hear it, but in the distance, there was music, and there was what they thought was laughter. And they walked very, very carefully down the grand hall with the flickering torches. And in the distance, the laughter and the singing and the music got closer and closer, and they came out into a grand hall. And there in the grand hall was a long table, and there sitting at the long table were some of the most gorgeous creatures they had ever seen in their lives. Awful beauties they were. And all of a sudden the conversation stopped. And those sitting at the table turned their heads to look at the new visitors. Oh, the troops could smell the roasted meats. The troops could smell the sweet pies and the roasted vegetables. And that must be wine. There's got to be some ale here. We're hungry. We're hungry. And one of the most awesomely evil beauties rose from her chair and came towards him and said, Come, sit, share our meal with us, laugh with us. Oh, the dark elves are dancing and dancing and dancing. Oh, mortals, won't you come dance with them too? For there's feasting and singing and laughter and dancing. Oh, mortals, won't you come dance with them too? Except the captain. He said, Don't go. Once you eat their food, you're trapped. You'll never be able to leave. Oh, Captain, that's just an old child's tale. You know it's true. You know it's not going to happen. And anyway, we're hungry. We're going to go and sit. And so they did. They sat in chairs next to the awesome beauties and the handsome men, and the music began again. And they ate their fill of roasts and pies and vegetables, and they drank the wine and they drank the ale, and they laughed. Oh, the dark elves are dancing and dancing and dancing. There's singing and laughing, and there's feasting too. Oh, but the captain, he stood way back in the shadows so no one could see him. And soon, the table disappeared. musicians appeared, and the music began, and it was jaunty dance tunes, and everyone was happy and drinking ale and wine, and the women, the lovely, awesomely beautiful women, went over and said, "Would you dance with us?" And their voices enchanted the troops, and the troops said, went with them, and with one arm up and one arm around the waist, they began to dance. And the music got quicker and faster and faster, and they turned and they twirled, and the captain sat and stood in the darkness, and he watched what was happening. His troops, their hair began to grow long, long. It turned white and began to fall out. Their wrinkles became like dried roasted prunes, and slowly you could see, with every turn of the dance, their flesh would melt away until there was nothing but skeleton. And then the skeletons began to decay. Oh, the dark elves are dancing and dancing and dancing. Oh, mortals, won't you come dance with them too? And soon the skeletons turned to dust. Down at the feet of the drow women. One of the drow women looked around and smiled. And then she saw the captain. She saw him in the shadows. And slowly she began to walk over, smiling that avaricious smile. And slowly she said, "Oh, won't you come dance?" And the captain said, "By all the holy saints of the Blessed Virgin, what are you, woman?" Everything disappeared. The captain found himself sitting on a hill. The sun was coming up. The sky was blue. He could hear birds beginning to chirp. And the only thing that he remembered was he was holding in his hand the name stripes from the uniforms of all the men. And he had to take them. And he went and he walked. What was he going to tell the families? That's it.
Kind of chilling there, David, kind of chilling, just a little chilling. I was rubbing the goosebumps. Our next story. Hope you guys are still getting scared. We're getting a little bit more into our scariness. And our next teller is Chisholm. Chisholm, tell us a story about Madame Biko.
Hey, hi all. There once was a rich prince. So rich that when he finally became king, he relocated his entire village on top of a hill so that his palace could be at its peak and he could see the village and all of its houses from every side. Now, this rich prince, now king, was not just rich. Oh, he was a dreamer. And how he would look and long and look over his village, thinking of the day that it'd be filled with his offspring. And he would do this for hours, thinking and longing and dreaming until one day it hit him. Why? Wait, he was king after all, and he knew what was best for his people. So immediately, he summoned his guardsmen, his guards, councilmen, and stewards, and gave them a new decree. And this decree was that every year they would bring to him one daughter from the village. They would bring her to his palace where she will bear his child. And of course, this couldn't be any daughter from the village. The king was rich, he was a dreamer, but he was also picky, a bit selective. And so the woman they had to choose had to be, of course, beautiful, voluptuous, and obedient to the king's wishes. So with that, he sent the guards and the councilmen and the stewards out to select the first village daughter. And when the first one was selected, the daughter of a baker, the entire family was overjoyed because certainly, if she gave birth to the king's child, the family would then have a share in the king's many, many riches. So when the time had come, they dressed her all in the best garments they owned. They celebrated with great pomp. In a single procession, they made their way up the hill. And she walked across the village, the palace gates. The gates closed, and the people waited and waited and waited. And when 9 months had passed and no one heard the cries of a new child from the palace, well, they considered what had happened. Right? Maybe the daughter was infertile, and oh, that wasn't good to bring a daughter that's infertile to the king because he was not only rich, a dreamer, and selective. The king had a bit of a temper. He was quick to anger when he didn't get what he wanted. And all the villagers understood that they would not see their daughter again if he did not get what he wanted. And so years passed like this. The councilmen, the guards, and the stewards came down the hill. They selected a daughter from among the villagers. They brought her up, all dressed in her best. She entered the palace. They closed the gates, and the people waited and waited and waited and waited until the guards and stewards and councilmen were sent back down the hill in search of another daughter. And what was wrong with these daughters? All of them infertile for many years. No single daughter gave birth to the king's child. Until one year, a strange woman from outside of the village appeared. She had garments as fine as silk, a voice as smooth as honey, and the way she walked, it was as if her feet were as light as petals. Oh, the king, he did not wait for the councilmen, the guards, or the stewards to tell him about her. He sent them directly to her, all with the same request: come to the palace to have my child. First, the stewards came. Before her stall, she sold textiles, and she told them no. Then the councilmen came in their royal regalia, saying that she must come to the palace to bear the king's child, and she said no. And then finally the guards came, all rough and tumble through the marketplace, flipping over her textiles and demanding that she go to the palace for the king commands it. And she said no. And finally, all of these men went back to the king to tell him her response. And when the king heard it, oh, he left his throne. He left his palace. He went down that hill into the marketplace before her stall and got on his knees and said, Biko, meaning, please. It was the first time the marketplace was that quiet. No one had heard such a word from the king. They were so surprised that they named this mysterious woman Madam Biko. And before the king, she said, "Yes, but on one condition." And the king said, "Of course, anything, anything." And Madagamia told her what her condition was. He must swear by his own blood that he will not kill their child, which seemed preposterous. The king went on and on, said, "Of course, why would I do such a thing?" But Madabika was insistent. She took out a small knife from her pocket and told him, by his own blood, he was to make this oath. And the king, he took the knife, pricked his finger, rubbed it into the ground, and said, "Yes, I will accept this condition." And at that, the entire marketplace was in uproar. The king summoned all of his servants, his cooks, all of his dancers to come to the marketplace just there so they could celebrate. And on, all the partying, all the noise went until finally the king and Madame Biko went back up the hill beyond the gates. And when those gates closed, the people waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for far much longer than all the other village daughters. Until one night, there was this piercing scream that broke through the village. No one knew whether it was an animal, a child, a man, or a woman, but they heard it ring through the night. They were so scared, no one left. And by the next morning, many, many villagers flocked towards the palace, knowing the sound came from there, to look inside. The palace was deathly quiet. For the first time, no movement at all was in it. And the palace was like this for many, many days, weeks, months, until finally the councilmen, guards, and stewards came back down the hill, looking for the next village daughter. This time, the next daughter they found, in 9 months, she was pregnant. And some of the old women would say how they saw the girl having a love affair right before she was selected, but it didn't matter. The king finally had a child. And this one was a boy. He always wanted a boy. And when the child was presented to the village, oh, it was a great big celebration. All the villagers were invited to the king's palace, where they had the biggest party they had ever seen. Even more dancing, even more food, even more decorations, even more pomp. It was wild and lasted well into the night. But before anybody could leave, there was a sound that came over all of that music. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. No one knew where this noise was coming from, but it was somewhere within the palace. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. And the king, for some reason, he started to look a little pale. So all the people walked about the palace, checking outside around the gates and the front where the party was, and they walked through the kitchen, checked all the rooms until they went outside to the king's garden. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. And strange enough, the king's garden didn't look like a royal garden, no. It was fairly lifeless and had all of these tiny, tiny mounds everywhere. No one knew what it was. But in the center of this garden, there was a single hole that was dug up, and a woman standing in front of that hole in garments that were fine like silk, glowing actually. Turned around, no one knew who this woman was, but they recognized that voice. Biko, Biko, yes, I will. A voice as smooth as honey. And as that woman turned around and faced the village, she was holding a bundle in her hands and had a great big gash across her chest. It was Madame Biko. And the bundle in her hands, well, it was wrapped in the ceremonial garments used when ushering in a new baby girl. The villagers looked around and noticed how all of these tiny, tiny mounds had strips of that same ceremonial garment. At that, the villagers learned something new about their king. He was not rich. He was not just rich, a dreamer, selective, and quick to anger. He was already a father who had many, many children. But he only wanted a son. And as the villagers were looking about there, Madame Biko came closer and closer to the king, who was even a paler version of himself than anyone had ever seen. And as she stepped closer, she sung, Biko, Biko, yes, I will, with every step. Biko, Biko, yes, I will, until she was face to face with the king. Biko, Biko, yes, I will, and said, Marry, my child, upon this hill. The end.
Thank you, Chisholm. Thank you, Chisholm. Well, folks, we're getting very scary now. And I want you guys all to do me a favor. I want you to open up chat on your device, wherever you're at, open up chat. And at the very top of the chat, you're going to see a post by me that says, this is a fundraising event to support the Dallas Storytelling Guild programming. Here's the donation link. Donate here. So I want you to consider donating here while you're in the chat. But also while you're in the chat, I've got a polling question for you. And the question is, do you believe in ghosts, spooks, or spirits? And I want you to take 5 minutes and write your response and write your answer in chat. Do you believe in ghosts, spooks, or spirits? Yes, no, maybe so. So share your thoughts. Hey guys, donation link will ask you for $10, but feel free to click on that 10, 15, 20 times if you want. And with that, we are back. I would encourage you guys to check out and read the chats and the different responses. And wait, I like the maybes and the maybe nots. Yeah, no sense of being too committal, one way or the other. Guys, we are into our second session of storytelling. And this section begins with things that go bump in the night. And our first teller is Tim Couch. Somewhere a puppy cries. Tim, tell us a story.
Thanks, Michael. I laid in my bed and pulled the covers up tight. I was so cold. I wish my cat Calico would come upstairs and lay next to me like she normally did, but Calico would not come upstairs. I arrived with my parents at this house, and I opened her carrying case, and Calico went immediately into the house. And when I looked, I found her in the kitchen, up against a door that I later learned led to the cellar. She had her nose at the very bottom of the door, and her tail was going back and forth, back and forth, and Calico would not leave that spot. Mom and Dad came into my bedroom, and Dad said, "Have a good night, sport." And Mom leaned over and kissed me and said, "We're right down the hall." And as they left, Mom closed the door. And as soon as they did, that door creaked back open. That door would never stay closed as long as we lived in the house. I must have fallen asleep for a while, but when I woke up, I could hear the puppy crying. He sounded sad and lonely. I knew just how he felt, but I wonder where he was. Mom said that our nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. I laid there and I listened to that puppy cry and cry and cry until I finally fell asleep again. And when I woke up, I knew that Dad was downstairs fixing breakfast. I could smell bacon. And so I jumped out of bed and put on my slippers and went down. Calico was still in the kitchen with his nose against the bottom of that door and his tail going back and forth, back and forth. "Dad," I said, "can you check out the basement?" "Yes, Fred," said Mom. "You're going to need to check it out. There are probably mice down there. That's what Calico smells." "Well, I'll do it as soon as I can," said Dad. "Have some pancakes. How did you sleep?" "Not very well. The puppy kept me up all night with its crying." "What puppy?" said Dad. "We didn't hear anything," said Mom. "How could you not have heard it? He cried all night." "Old houses make all kinds of funny sounds," said Mom. "Ooh," said Dad. "Maybe this house is haunted with a ghouly ghost." "Oh, Fred," said Mom, "don't listen to him. It was probably the wind. You know, wind can catch sounds and make sounds. That's probably what you heard." I put some syrup on my pancakes and didn't say any more, but I knew that there was no wind last night. After breakfast, Mom and Dad said they wanted to go into town, and I was pretty excited until we got into town and went to the hardware store where they bought paint and wallpaper with flowers on it. It was boring. But then we went to the supermarket, and that wasn't too bad. While Mom and Dad weren't looking, I took some of my own money and I bought a little package of cat treats for Calico and a little package of puppy treats for that puppy I'd heard. When we got home, Mom and Dad went in to prepare that room they call the parlor for wallpaper, and I very quietly walked around and around the house, searching everywhere. Here, puppy, here, puppy. I looked everywhere. I even crawled underneath some overgrown bushes at the front of the house, but there was no puppy there, not even paw prints. I went into the parlor. Dad, do you think you can check out that basement? Not now, son. We got to strip these walls from the old wallpaper and get them ready to paint tomorrow. He said, I'll do it first thing in the morning. Okay, Dad. That second night, it was even colder. And when Mom and Dad left, I lay there and I didn't go to sleep. And not much longer after, I heard the puppy crying again. He was crying and crying. How could Mom and Dad not hear that? And that's when I realized it. That puppy wasn't outside. That puppy was in the house. I bet he was in the basement. That's what Calico smelled, not mice. Well, Dad was going to check it out in the morning, but I didn't want to wait that long. And I knew the puppy didn't want to wait that long. And so I hopped out of bed. I didn't even put my slippers on. The floor was cold, and I made my way across it and over to the stairs. And by the time I was starting down the stairs, that puppy was howling. I went down into the kitchen. Calico was still at that door with his tail going back and forth, and I grabbed the ice cold knob and turned it and pulled the door open. And the second the door came open, the howling stopped and Calico was down the stairs in a flash. Calico! I looked around. There was a string hanging up from the ceiling and I could see a bare bulb up there. So I pulled the string, but that bulb was burned out. And it was dark down in the basement, but as my eyes adjusted, it wasn't that dark. There were kind of windows up at the top of the basement wall, and even though they were filthy, the moonlight was pouring in, and it wasn't that dark down there. So I went down, and I started to search. There were boxes and trash everywhere, and dust and cobwebs. It was filthy. I really jumped when something brushed against my leg, but it was just Calico. Calico, I said, come here. But she slipped past me and went to a corner I had not explored yet, a corner that was darker than the others, so I'd left it for the last. And there Calico sat when I walked up. Her ears were pitched forward, and her tail was going back and forth, back and forth. What do you see, Calico? I said, and I started in, and my toe touched something, and I reached down and picked it up. It was a dog bowl. And as I held it up, the moonlight caught it, and I could read what was on it. T-O-B-Y. Toby. Toby was the dog's name. Here, Toby, I said. Here, boy. But then I looked at that bowl, and it was covered with dust. How could the dog survive down there if its bowl was dusty? I looked into the dark corner and I could see a blanket mounded up there and there was something on it. And so I reached forward and I touched bones, bones. Dad was right. This house was haunted. And I turned to run up the stairs and I heard the sound of a door going click. I was locked in. I ran up the stairs and I grabbed the doorknob and turned it, and the door swung open. That door wouldn't stay open, just like the door in my room wouldn't stay closed. But I didn't want to go back down in the basement. Calico, come here, I said. I heard Calico down there. And I didn't want to leave her trapped down there with whatever it was. And that's when I realized I still had Toby's bowl in my hand. So I put it down in the door jamb and pulled the door so that it rested against the bowl and it wouldn't close. And I went up, shaking, and I got in my bed and I pulled the covers up and I was shaking, not from cold this time. And a few seconds later, something jumped on my bed, and it was just Calico. Come here, you, I said. And I pulled my warm cat up against my chest and was stroking her as she purred. And that's when I heard another sound over her purring. Click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. It was getting louder. It was, why, it sounded like dog claws coming up the stairs and click, 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 down the hallway and click, 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 into my room. And I looked. The moon was pouring through my window, but I couldn't see anything. But I felt something jump on my bed. And I felt it, even though I couldn't see it. I felt it. It turned once, twice, 3 times around, and then settled down with a I probably should have been scared, but I wasn't. Hi, Toby, I said, and I felt an invisible tail going thump, thump, thump against my covers. And I reached down with my hand, and an invisible tongue began to lick my fingers. Good boy, I said. Come up here with Calico and help keep me warm. And from that night onward, with my cat Calico on one side and my new puppy Toby, I was never cold in that house ever, ever again. That story is called Somewhere a Puppy Cries. It was written by Mary Kay Whittington, and I have her permission to tell it to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Awesome story, Tim. Awesome story. Awesome story. Whew. We're still telling chilling stories, and we're still getting very scared. Our next teller is Drama Mama, Deborah Waddell. Deb, why don't you come off of mute and tell us your story about the Battle of San Francisco Bay?
Okay. I'm not sure how to get me on the big screen.
We got you.
Okay. All I see is you, Michael.
Well, you can change your view to gallery view, and then you'll see everybody.
Okay.
And I've got it focused on just the speaker.
Okay.
Does that work? Does that work for you?
I just wanted to see so I could see if I was in the light, but I guess,
Is that better?
how can I get me as large as you?
Well, you are on mine when you put it under speaker view, okay? Well, you go up to view and put it
Okay.
on speaker view.
I have it on speaker view, but I'm speaking and it's still got you.
Well,
Okay. I don't know. Oh, there you are.
now do you see yourself?
No.
All we see is you.
Debbie,
Okay.
when you're talking, you're in large view.
Okay. I'm not going to worry about it. Is the light okay?
Perfect.
All right. What do you do when fog's a hauntin'? What do you do when fog's a hauntin' early in the morning? What do? I go the other way. Well, you would too if you'd been there at 5:15 in the morning, April 18th, 1906, when Fogg and my captain had the battle of the century that started the San Francisco earthquake and fire. What? You're looking at me askance. What? You think I'm just a little long in the tooth and I wouldn't know anything about any old earthquakes? Well, I'll have you know that I am the last survivor of that tragic day. I have been moving around the San Francisco Bay for longer than anyone else. And when I move, I look through my one ruby red eye. It's the eye that sees through the shadows. It sees through the starless night. It's the eye that can find fog where no one else knows to look. And that's my eye. I'm second in command of the ship that patrols all of San Francisco Bay to protect it from fog. You see, long before there were lighthouses and foghorns, fog got away with murder. He crashed more ships against the rocky stones in the bay and pushed them to their death at the bottom of the ocean. But today, I'm here to tell you what happened way back when, before anyone knew about one-eyed Ruby May. Now, I was watching, and my captain was telling me what happened when he was a boy. He and his father would go out fishing in the bay, and they'd sing sea shanties with a hey, whoa, somewhere swimming, fish are singing, our catch is winning. But one day, they were so busy singing, they forgot to look where they were going. And their little boat ran into the rocky shoals. And their fog was ready to push that ship down in the water and send Captain's father off. The captain was right there. His father got an old plank of wood, sent him out to the shore, and in his exhaustion, he fell to the grave beneath. Captain swore that day, when he became a very large grown-up captain, that he'd stop fog from trampling on his bay. And that's when he met me. He became captain, and he found me to guide the ship through the bay with my ruby red eye. Now, on this particular day, my eye was leading. The crew was singing. The captain pacing. And something was howling. Something was shaking, and up through the water, a bony hand rose up and reached for the captain. Avenge me! Avenge me! Send fog away from the bay. The captain watched. He knew his father's arm He knew what he had to do. There and then, his revenge started bubbling up and up inside. And right about then, fog came moving out, and he saw those clouds. And he went to the clouds and started salting them and sending that salt right down on the crew. And the crew started falling on the floor deck. The captain yelled, "No! Away, fog! Go away! My family doesn't need you." But fog wouldn't listen. He was ready to send the crew to their fate. When Captain went to the cannon, took out a giant ball, and shot it right through the middle of fog. Fog started flying from one end of the sky to the other. Banshee birds howled and yowled, ready to grab bits of shadow skin to nibble. Captain watched. The banshees watched. The crew watched. Slowly, fog became no more. Captain went over and picked up a hard, cold rock. It was all that was left of fog, where his heart should have been. Captain threw fog to the ends of the earth. And there he's still roaming. Well, the crew, my ruby red eye, and Captain thought we won it out. The next morning we slept in since we'd won the day. But there was rumbling. The oceans were raging, and down in the core of the earth, that cannonball bust a gut, and the earth started cracking, fires started burning, the city started folding. It was 5:15 in the morning, April 18th, 1906. The San Francisco earthquake and fire had made its day. Now, I'm still here. The crew's long since passed on. But I promised to tell you the whole truth, and that I did. Except for one little thing. My ruby red eye is in my figurehead, leading the ship. Watch out. You never know where fog'll be next.
Great story, Debbie. Great story. Spooky fog, spooky fog. So let's continue on with spooky tales. And our next teller is T.J. Rankin. And T.J., the cats the boy drew. T.J., why don't you tell us the story?
Thank you, Michael. All right. I have a fractured fairy tale of the boy who drew cats called The Cats That the Boy Drew. A cat, they say, may not enter paradise, for the cat did not weep when the Buddha died. A cat that grows old enough may split their tail and cause all manner of mischief as a Nikomata. But what of the cat that dies young, or the cat that falls underneath the rickshaw, or faces the cruelty of the dog? Those cats, wee cats like that, not evil enough for Jigoku, not allowed in Tengoku, float in the Miedo, in the place between places, that forest of between the worlds. The souls pass us by on their journey to the mountains. The kami pay us no mind. We roam about lost, for we have slipped between two places, and for once we cannot slink out. So the place between places is filled with us. Cats, cats, cats. Big ones, small ones, tall ones. Cats, cats, cats. Calico and Tortoiseshell and Tabby. But one day some of us cats looked around. The forest was gone, the cold air banished. We smelled the cherry blossoms on the breeze, and the warm sun we once basked in was on our faces. All around we saw, tethered to the world of the living, and ink and paper was us. All around were the drawing of cats, cats, cats. Big ones, small ones, tall ones. Cats, cats, cats. Calico and Tortoiseshell and Tabby. And in the midst of these drawings there was a little boy, just sleeping, brush in hand. A man that we suppose was his father came in. What a cry he gave! For there we were, those cats, on all the paper, on the screen walls, on the tatami mats. All around were the boys' cats, us. The man burned the papers. He replaced the screen walls. He washed the tatami mats, and we all faded away, back into the places between places. Still, the boy would draw every now and then, and we would watch him. We watched as the family packed his bags. We watched as they took him to the monastery. We watched as they shaved his head and compelled him to be a monk. We kept an eye on this boy who gave us life. He would draw us in the margins and draw us instead of the sutras. Then we would fade back into the place between places, and we would talk to the others, how he was doing, how he looked, about what the other monks would say, and what they would mention about the village in the north, of the demon that lurked there in the old monastery, of the people that would go missing, and how those number of missing would grow. Then the night came. Again he was filled with the fervor, the passion. We encouraged him. Please, young one, we said, please, see us, draw us. And when he fell asleep in the monastery, brush in hand, there we were. Cats, cats, cats. Big ones, small ones, tall ones. Cats, cats, cats. Calico and Tortoiseshell and Tabby. We walked this time. We stretched as cats do and flexed our little drawn paws, kneaded the mats and paper we were on, made the walls vibrate with our purrs. But the monks woke up, and we went stock still. They too were dismayed like the father. They too washed the mats and burned the papers. They too told the boy he was not suited for this life, and that he must leave. But we were afraid. Afraid of the stories that we had heard, of the thing that lived in the village northward. As they burned the papers, one little scrap, just one little cat, just a kitten really, flew by the head of a monk's ear, and that little cat, it whispered to him, "Tell the boy, be like a cat. Tell the boy, avoid large places, stick to small." And hope upon hope, the monk told him so. So the boy was sent out away from the monastery on his own. We would watch him when we would look out at him from the place between places, when he would draw us in the road with sticks. He came in time to that village in the north, to that abandoned monastery. Oh, how we wish we could cry out, to warn him, to beg him not to stay there. But he did. He made a little fire, cooked a little fish that he caught, and then he mixed some black powder with water, and he prepared the tip of his brush. And all over those tattered walls and leaf-strewn mats he drew cats, cats, cats. Big ones, small ones, tall ones. Cats, cats, cats. Calico and tortoiseshell and tabby. In those walls, we heard it scraping. In those walls, we heard it crawling, chewing, preparing. That boy yawned, and he stretched, and with all our might, with all our will, we whispered to him on that little bit of wind that came through the broken screen doors, avoid large places, stick to small. The boy, he seemed to think for a moment, and then he got up and went into a small closet and shut himself in with pillow and blanket. An hour passed, maybe two. Then that thing came skulking out from the walls. It was a demon, a bakemono, a yokai, large as a horse, with beady jaundice eyes, tufts of brown fur, just sticking up helter-skelter, a long naked tail snaking down, two sharp teeth glittering, clacking and hungry. It picked those teeth with those claws, paws, this rat-like thing, and it sniffed the air, this rodent demon, and its hungry beady eyes turned to where the boy lay. We were scared. Our ink hair raised, our paper eyes grew. It wanted the boy, but it was a rat, and we were cats. So we stretched, and we reached, and we moved those lines of ink off those papers and walls and mats, and we moved to the rat. It hissed, and it howled, it bit, and it gnashed. We bit back, we hissed back. We stained our claws with its blood, our whiskers dripped red, our teeth sunk deep. It fought, and it fought well. The tail cracked like a whip, the claws tore and ripped. We were paper and ink, and many of us fell. The mats tattered, the walls slashed, but oh, the boy drew so many of us, so many little hunters of the rat. And hour after hour the demon grew tired and wan, and it finally fell. The boy awoke, and he gasped when he saw that rat thing. And he looked at us all, whiskers and claws smeared with blood on the walls and the mats and the papers. He smiled. He knew. The boy returned to the monastery and grew to be a great monk. Every night he prayed for us, for those who live in the place between places. One or two of us will fade to pass on to Tengoku, but one or two new ones will come. He prays for them too, our boy. If you ever draw a cat, look away just for a moment. Perhaps you will look back, and when you do, the tail would have shifted, the paws flexed. Do not be alarmed. We are just watching you, looking out from that place between places, always ready for the rat demon and its ilk. For that is our purpose. We cats, cats, cats. Big ones, tall ones, small ones. Cats, cats, cats. Calico and tortoiseshell and tabby. Thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I never was a cat fan, but I I'm I'm a TJ Rankin fan. Thank you guys. Hey guys, I'm kind of scary myself, so I need time just to take a deep breath and get some the scariness off of me, and I want to give you guys a chance to do the same. So I want you to take a minute and go back to the chat and read some of the remarks about spirits and some of the remarks about ghosts and what people do believe and what they don't believe. And also make sure you read the link where it says donate here, because remember, this is a fundraiser. and you're welcome to give as often as possible. Whew. Okay, guys, I don't know about you, but I'm a little scared about going forward. We started off with the lightweight stuff and kept moving up. And Amanda, I see you out there, and I see a little youngster with you too. If you feel like it gets to be a little bit too spooky, you feel free to just escape into the fog, and we'll understand. Whew. Guys, I don't know about you, but I've been scared and I've been scared, and now we're at the bone-chilling portion, the finale, our final three tellers, and now it's about to get really scary. We're going to start off with our next teller, and that's going to be Richard Nash, The Haunted Jefferson Hotel, and it's a true story. Richard, why don't you tell us a story?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear here. What I'm going to tell you is absolute truth. I'll put my hands on any number of Bibles that you want. This is a true story. My wife and I have birthdays one day apart. Different years, but one day apart. So what we try to do on our birthdays is something special. Several years ago, we decided to go down to Jefferson, Texas, and go to the Haunted Jefferson Hotel, which was reported to be the most haunted hotel around. Number of different ghosts. They have the traveler, they have a small child, they have other ghosts, but the one we wanted to find was Elizabeth. She was a young woman in room 19 who hung herself after being left at the altar because she was pregnant. A very sad story, but we wanted to go visit Elizabeth and see if there was anything we could find. So I got my EMF meter and I got my thermal thermometer, and I was ready to go ghost hunting. We drove down to Jefferson, Texas. Nice, pleasant drive. We got to the hotel. It was old. It's been around for a long time. You could feel the floor move a little bit as you walked. We discovered upon checking in that there were no other guests checking in that night. We were going to be the only tenants. I said, cool. I discovered again that the staff would leave at 9 o'clock at night, and they gave us a code to go in and out of the building. So we were going to be alone in a haunted hotel. And I was excited. I was going, wow, ghost party in room 19. Ghost party. Come on down, ghosts. Let's see you. Well, we went upstairs, put our stuff out, and I took my EMF meter out, and I laid it on the bed. We went out, we ate, we looked around the town, went back to the hotel, and the EMF meter had been moved over to the dresser. Okay, that's possible. Someone came in and just moved it. I'll go with that. We ate. We sat down in the lobby at 9 o'clock, and I started doing all of the things you see on Ghost Hunters. I had a video going. I had was saying, if you're here, walk down the stairs and make it creak. Nothing. I did the thing where I asked questions and recorded to see if I could get any responses that were not audible to human ears. Nothing happened. The only thing that happened was we heard something move behind the clerk's desk, and there was nothing there. And my wife, being the very practical one, says, "I'm going to bed. You coming?" So we went up right about midnight, a little after, and got into the bed, and I could not go to sleep. I didn't want to give up. So I said, "If you're okay with it, I'm going to go explore the hotel." She said, "Go, just let me sleep." So I did. And I left out and I walked down that entire second floor all the way down, looking with my meter and looking for the difference in temperature changes. Nothing. I went on the balcony, which was restricted because it was not safe. Nothing was out there. So I went downstairs. And I went back to the lobby and I sat. And I waited. And I did everything. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And drinking coffee. The only way I could stay awake was to make a pot of coffee, and I did, and I drank it. Well, I was getting kind of bored a little bit. But all that coffee had a special effect on me, and I had to go take care of business. So I got up and leaving my equipment there. Didn't need it, because I was just going into the hall that went down that long corridor, and I was just going to go in there, take care of business, and come back. So I did. I went in there, took care of business, and I stepped out, and I said, "I'm going to do this old school. I'm not going to take anything with me." And I started walking down that long hallway. It took 5 steps. And I heard something, and I turned around, and there was nothing there. The only thing I saw was where the safe had been under the stairs, but there was nothing else. So I went, okay, let's keep going. I started walking again. There was another sound. I turned around, and there was nothing there. Okay, let's go for 3 in a row. That's going to be significant. If I have something happen 3 times in a row, that's going to be at least something. I turned around because I had heard something, but as I was turning, everything changed. The air had gotten stale. I was covered with goose flesh all over my body instantly. I could not get a decent breath, and I was feeling threatened. If you know anything about ghost hunting, one of the things they tell you is if you walk through a cold spot, you either walk through a ghost or it walked through you. I believe that something had walked to me and was staying there and keeping that air bad because I was really feeling threatened. And my mind was starting to race, and I said, okay, there's only one thing to do. And I very calmly, with great discipline, walked back through that threshold. And as soon as I crossed that threshold, the goose flesh vanished. The air was fresh and I was able to breathe again. And I sat back down. I was thinking about this, and about that time I started hearing voices coming from upstairs. Now, you know, in an old building, the wood and the floors and all, it's going to change the sound. So you know it's human voices, you just can't make them out. And I was hearing those voices, and they were getting a little louder and a little louder, and I'm going, And I said, maybe I should go to bed. I've had my experience. I had this whole thing covered with goose flesh. That's enough. I'm going to go to bed. So I started walking up the stairs, and as I did, the voices got clearer. I was walking through cold spots, and as I made my way all the way down to that room, to room 19, and as I went in, I made it there safely. But I left the EMF meter on, and I put it at a 45-degree angle so it would cover the door and the room. And I got into bed and I went to sleep. Oh, wow. About 15 minutes into my sleep, my wife wakes me up and said, "Your machine's going off." And I listened. Beep, 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 beep. I came awake. "Elizabeth, is that you?" Beep, 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 beep. "Elizabeth, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming." Beep, 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 beep. And so I started asking her questions, yes or no questions, and she would beep yes, beep, 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 or she wouldn't beep for no. And so we talked like that for a little while, and she just kind of went away. Well, I went back to sleep. I was so comfortable. And I had another experience. I actually had Elizabeth there. Wow. Pretty soon, I hear a beep, beep, beep. She'd come back. My wife says, "Oh no, she's back again." I said, "Be quiet, we're here for the ghost anyway." My wife did not like that. But I started talking with Elizabeth again, and I was having a great conversation, and I asked her about what happened downstairs, and I asked her, was I in danger? She goes, beep, 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 beep. Was that one of the ghosts that they talk about here? Beep, 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 beep. Was it the traveler? Beep, 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 beep. Okay. Well, my wife by this time had started to wake up and was groggy and didn't want any more of this. So I said to her, she said, "Send her awake. We got to sleep here. Go, 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 go." And so I thanked her and told her it was our birthdays, and she gave me a birthday to remember. And I have been remembering it ever since. But one of the things, because I knew that the traveler was not necessarily a good guy, I asked her if she'd keep our room safe. Beep, 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 beep. And so throughout the night, I would hear as she would come in, beep, 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 beep. She patrolled my room and kept us safe the entire night. And I thanked her for that. The next morning we got up, we got ready when the staff came in, and we checked out, and they asked what had happened, and I told them this story. And they believed me because they've had experiences, but they said, "Most people don't stay the night. They leave in the middle of the night. Why did you stay?" And I said, "We paid for the room." And that is God's awesome truth. I swear on anything. That is a true ghost story. The Jefferson Hotel closed shortly after that. It's been reopened. And I understand it's still haunted. It's really worth a trip down to Jefferson, Texas. And if you go, say hi to Elizabeth for me, and watch out for the traveler.
Ooh, thank you, Richard. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All of a sudden, I'm in a house all alone and it's all dark, and I can feel the cold air blowing through the window. and hearing sounds all throughout the house. I
Well,
hope
you
somebody
know,
comes home soon.
you do know that the ghosts are everywhere, and you're just bringing them in as we talk about them.
Ooh. Well, let's talk some more. And we'll talk with Peggy Helmick Richardson. It happened in Wasika. Peggy, tell us the story. You're out there somewhere. You got,
Unmute,
you
Peggy.
got take your mute off.
Unmute.
Little
There you,
details.
there
Thank
you
you.
go. Little details.
Okay, this story that I'm going to tell is also true, but it did not happen to me, seeing as that they were born more than a century before I was. And it involves two different girls, so I hope it doesn't get too confusing. Mary Roth was born in Indiana in 1846 to Dorothy and Asa Roth. After several moves, including Texas, the Roth family eventually settled down in the town of Watseka, Illinois, which is about 90 miles south of Chicago. But sadly, when Mary was about 6 months old, she started having seizures. And as she grew older, they started lasting long. And when she got school age, they started lasting for hours at a time and came daily. Now, one of the few joys in this poor girl's life was playing the piano with her older sister, Minerva. She loved especially to play duets with her, and one of her favorite songs to play was, oddly enough, We Are Coming, Sister Mary. It was a popular song at the time, but it very eerily told of a dream that forewarned of death. Now, by the time Mary was 15, her seizures were lasting for hours and sometimes even happened twice a day. In desperation, her doctor had her court ordered into an asylum. And if you know anything about what those were like back then, they were awful. The poor girl was put under all sorts of torturous treatment that did absolutely nothing to help dispel the seizures. And after a year there, it was finally agreed that they would let her go home to her family. Now, back at home, Mary was desperate and she started experimenting with bloodletting. And at that time, that meant she would apply leeches, not only to her body, but even her face. And when it became evident to her that the leeches were not doing anything to help, and instead of abandoning the idea of doing bloodletting, she just decided that she wasn't doing enough bloodletting. So one time when she felt a seizure coming on, she grabbed a kitchen knife and slashed her arm in hopes that she could bleed enough to make the seizure stop. Well, all that did was cause such a horrendous amount of blood loss that she lost consciousness, and it was a miracle she even survived it. The family found her in time and they took her to bed and bandaged the arm, and she was delirious for 5 days. There were times when she would get so agitated in this state that she actually began clawing at her arms with her fingernails, or pardon me, her face with her fingernails. Now, her family was scared that she might claw her eyes and go blind, and she certainly didn't need any more torture put on her. So they tightly wrapped bandages around her eyes to protect them. It was about 5 days before she finally came out of this. And when the family went to unwrap the bandages around her eyes, she stopped them. She said she didn't need her eyes unwrapped because she could already see everything around her. Not only could she see all the family members in the room, she could point out different objects. And then she claimed she could actually see angels in the room. Now, Word spread, and family and friends would come to visit, and she would show them her skills by doing things like reading closed books. And finally, the editor of the newspaper in town learned about this girl that could see everything with her eyes bandaged, so he paid a call on her. And for him, she read a letter aloud to him. The only thing is that letter was folded up in an envelope that was sealed and inside of a pocket of his jacket. Now, shortly after all of this happened, Mary's seizures started to subside just slightly, and the family was hoping for the best. And she was feeling in better spirits. So in July of 1885, the now 18-year-old Mary traveled with her parents to Peoria, Illinois to visit some family members and celebrate the 4th of July. And the day after the celebration, while still at the friend's house, one afternoon she decided to go back and take a nap. And 30 minutes after she went back, Mary passed away. The family had her body brought back to Waseca, and she was buried there in the Oak Hill Cemetery. A year before Mary Roth died, another little girl was born. Her name was Mary Laurency Benham, and she went by Laurency. And her parents were Lorinda and Thomas Benham. When she was 6 years old, her family moved to a farm that was just south of Watseka. Now, Laurency was a happy, healthy child, and everything was going fine for her. Nothing out of the ordinary until she turned 13. And one morning she came down for breakfast and complained that she couldn't sleep because all night long people kept calling her by name, and they were so close to her she could feel their breath on her face. And this lasted several days until finally her mother agreed to sleep with her, and it stopped. But a few days after that, Laurency was sitting in the family working on a rug when she just stood up and announced, "I feel queer," and then bang, fell to the floor and laid rigid there for 5 hours. This episode continued every night. And when she would come out of these comatose episodes, she would tell her parents that she was visiting with spirits while she was out, including the spirits of a deceased baby brother and older sister. This went on for 2 months, and then boom, everything went back to normal for Laurency. But that only lasted for a few months. After that, Laurency was struck with the most horrendous stomach pains imaginable. Witnesses actually claimed to have seen Laurency in so much pain that she was bending over and not bending forward. She was bending backwards, and she would bend over so far that people swore up and down that they saw her heads, the back of her head touching the heels of her feet. They would last for hours, sometimes multiple times of each day. Now, at this time, the Benham family did not know Dorothy and Asa Roth. Mary had died 12 years earlier and 6 years before the Benhams had even moved there. But they probably knew about the Roths because the Roths had scandalized all of Watseka by becoming spiritualist. Those are the people that were talking to spirits, putting their hands on tables and getting them to lift up, that sort of thing. And in those days, most of the time, spiritualism was dismissed as just nonsense. And to truly devout Christians, they considered it an affront to God. So Lorinda Benham's horror, one afternoon, Mary Roth's mother, Dorothy, showed up on her doorstep. Well, she was going to be polite to the woman, so she invited her in. And once they were seated, Dorothy started to tell Lorinda about all that had happened to her daughter, Mary, and then begged her not to let the doctors convince her to put Laurency in an asylum. Well, of course, Dorothy was alarmed. Dorothy was alarmed at everything she had told her. Pardon me, Lorinda was alarmed at everything Dorothy had told her. And she told her husband after she had finally left that she wanted absolutely no contact with her whatsoever. But shortly after this, Laurency took another turn, and she began speaking in the voices of other people. And of course, word spread about this. And when Asa Roth heard about this, he paid a visit to Thomas. And Asa convinced Thomas to let the renowned spiritualist E.W. Stevens visit with his daughter Laurency. Now, when Dr. Stevens got to the house and Laurency was introduced to him, she said, "No, I am 63-year-old Katrina Hodge." And she told him about herself for a few moments, and then suddenly her voice changed, and she claimed to be a young man named Willie. Few other people spoke through Laurency until finally Mary Roth came through. And then Mary Roth explained to Dr. Stevens that Laurency was having to leave her body because she was very sick and was going to have to go to heaven to be healed. And since she wasn't going to need her body while she was up in heaven, she had offered its use to Mary until it was time for her to come back. So now Mary was in control of Laurency's body for a short while. And then she pleaded to be allowed to go home with her parents so she could visit with them and her brother and sister. Now, of course, Thomas and Lorinda Venom were adamantly refusing to allow their daughter to go to that strange Roth home. But as the days passed, the girl grew more and more despondent. And then one day, Dorothy Roth dropped by the Venom house, bringing with her her oldest daughter, Minerva. Remember the girl that Mary loved playing the duets on the piano with? Well, on seeing her mother and her older sister, Mary immediately cheered up and was just happy as could be. But as soon as they left, she plummeted into a dark despondency. Fearing their daughter might not survive, Lorinda and Thomas finally relented. Mary lived in the Roth home for 3 months. One of the first things she wanted to do was sit down at the piano with her sister Minerva and play "We Are Coming, Sister Mary." Then she went through all of her old letters that had been sent her, pulled out her favorite blue dress, and even started working on the tatted collar that she had been working on when she died. Sometimes Mary would leave Laurency's body and allow other spirits to come in and visit with other loved ones around Winnetka. And Mary shared with her family that while she was in heaven, she had visited with some of the most interesting people, and that list included Mary Queen of Scots and Henry IV. But on May 21st, 1878, Mary explained that an angel had come to her and told her it was time for Laurency to return to her body and that she would have to leave. Her sister Minerva escorted Mary to Asa Roth's office, and he, in turn, walked her back to the Venom home. And it was sometime during that trip that Mary Roth left the body of Laurency Venom, and Laurency returned. 4 years later, a now completely healed Laurency married a local farmer named George Benning, and the couple eventually had 11 children. Laurency only had a few memories of those moments that she was in heaven, but because her husband did not understand nor even approve of spiritualism, Laurency never pursued any further knowledge. But she admitted several times that she did call on Dorothy and Asa Roth and allow Mary to take possession of her body so she could once again visit with her parents. Lurency died in Los Angeles County in 1952, and she was buried there as well. And if you want to know more about Lurency and Mary Roth, all you need to do is find the book that E.W. Stevens wrote about the experience. But if you have a hard time finding that, all you need to do is go to their Find a Grave pages, and you'll find the story there as well.
Thank you, Peggy. Bone chilling, bone chilling. Hey, hopefully you guys are enjoying these scary ghost stories and scary stories. And remember to click on that donation button. And we're about to have our final teller, and it's Jean Helmick Richardson, and it's the Ghost Lights of Rio Blanco. Jean, tell us a story. Hey, and you have to come off mute.
Back on mute. There we
There you go.
go.
There you go. All right.
Welcome to all listening and all the ships at sea and everything out there. My name is Gene, and I was born way back, 1846, back in a little old shanty, a tar paper shack in the backyard of my grandma and grandpa. And that was the only house that my mom and daddy could afford. You see, he had just come back from the war, back about Christmas. And sure enough, I came into the world 9 months later, right after Christmas in September. And I was not really aware of it, but I was being born into a tiny little town called Crosbyton. Now, Crosbyton was a town of only about 2,000 people, but it was the county seat of Crosby County, and was a pretty nice little town. It was pretty egalitarian. We had no billionaires, and even the poor folk were provided for. I was on the lower end of that spectrum. We were kind of poor, but I didn't even notice it. Nobody did. And things were just different. They really were. And as I grew up there, I found out that high school was a real different thing. By the time I got to high school and was a freshman, they were harassing all the freshmen, not just because I was poor, but because we were freshmen. And the older kids had cars, and that was a really, really big deal. Now, it was in the 1960s, and the world was changing. Now, y'all all know how the world has changed, but you probably don't understand the fact that I had a party line telephone. 2 longs and a short meant it was our call. The world was so different that the cars only burned leaded gasoline, and most of the cars back then didn't even have turn signals. My grandpa would say you stick your arm out to the left when you're turning left, and you point over the top of the car when you're going to go to the right. And that way people would know what you was doing. But even though it was a long time, and 2,000 people was not very many people, we still had culture. We did. We had a theater, and that theater would show all those wonderful shows of that period. My favorites were the monster shows. You see, the atomic bomb had dropped. You heard about that. And radiation was a scary, scary thing. Why, it made giant tarantulas and space monsters and Godzilla and things would come out of the sky. UFOs were everywhere. The blob came and ate things, and triffids would drop out of the trees onto your back and take over your spinal column. Wow, it was a scary, scary world. Now, Croydon grew to a town of about 2,000 people, and I didn't mind it. In high school, that meant that I had less competition for the football team, and even a 126-pound pulling guard could be a starter. That don't happen anymore. But the biggest difference between me and the other kids, especially the older ones, was that I had no wheels. This was the age of the automobile. I mean, this was a time when cars were everywhere, and not having a car meant that you couldn't cruise. So I would have to bum a ride. On the weekends, we would cruise the drag, and we would go up and down the street. It wasn't that far. It was only about 12 blocks from one end of town to the other. And we'd turn around and come back and circle the Dairy Queen, or what they called the Dairy Mart, where my mama worked. And we would go back out down to the Bates Cemetery and turn around, or not cemetery, the Bates Motel, which is almost scary as itself, and turn around and come back. But sometimes the guys, especially the older guys, would want to get alone with their sweetheart, and there weren't too many parking places in a small town like that. You'd go out to the parking lot between the Little League Park and the rodeo grounds. There was a parking lot, and it was just bare parking lot, and the windows would fog up in the car, but it was not a very private place and not very scary or anything. And so the boys started driving out to a place called Rio Blanco Girl Scout Camp. And what you'd do is you'd drive only about 8 miles. You'd drive out and down off the Cat Rock and turn around and come back across a blank bridge. That was a nice effect. Blank bridge makes you kind of nervous and scared. And then you would get out to Camp Rio Blanco. And some of the older boys discovered that when they were talking about ghosts and all, those big old sycamore trees with their white trunks looked sort of ghostly. And they started asking me, the younger freshman, I said, can you make it a little spookier out there? And I said, sure, I know how to do that. I was very imaginative and kind of an entrepreneur, though I didn't even know what that word meant. I told them they'd have to pay me, and they said they would. So I managed to get F.H. Edwards. F.H. had an old pickup truck. He delivered feed for his daddy, and he would take me out there. Sometimes I'd take my little brother Smiley along with me, so I'd have an accomplice. And when the guys would come on in their cars, usually it was the family sedan. Most of the guys didn't have their own cars. They had a big old family Buick or a Pontiac or something, and they might double date and come out to that across the bridge and up to the Girl Scout, drive around the flagpole and park by the creek bottoms where the big sycamore trees was. Now, I knew how to scare people because you see those boys, they knew from the movie theaters and everything else that adrenaline is an aphrodisiac. That's right. When you're really, really scared, you get kind of excited, and even that old ugly boy next to you looks pretty good to hug up against. And so it made for a good thing to scare people, and I got very good at it. My Uncle Si worked for the volunteer fire department out there, and they had some Army surplus flashlights that were big old giant 6-cell D-cell flashlights that had a nice beam on them. And I would take that D-cell flashlight and shine it up amongst them sycamore trees on those sides where the ditch was, where the White River run, and it would look pretty spooky. Matter of fact, that's where the ghost lights of Rio Blanco, you might hear about them, and they're still there talking about it. And then I figured out that out by the Little League field, they had these scoreboard that had these aluminum sheets that were things you put the numbers in. I stole one of the zeros, and if I take aluminum sheet and shake it real good, it sounds like thunder. And it's pretty spooky sounding from out in the woods. And then I would get my little brother, Smiley was always good at this. He was little, and he would sneak up behind those cars and stick a bush up under the car and rub it back and forth. And boy, it would really scare the people in the car when they would hear that thing scratching around under the car. And that's how it worked. And we had a really good time scaring those people. I even made a tin can bull roar. If you want to try one, to get a coffee can, put some cord on it and pull on it. It sounds like the roar of an animal. And if you get up close to somebody and do that, and it's dark at night, and you talk about dark, there weren't no light pollution out there in that canyon. Absolutely none. It was dark as pitch. And so that made a pretty good noise, and I really liked scaring people anyway, and I got paid for it. I was an entrepreneur. Now, I remember vividly the night that old FH said, I was going to take you out, but my truck had a flat, and I had to change it. And when I got back in, I'd left the radio and the lights on, and the battery had gone dead. And by the time I got over to my daddy's and got his car and came back and boosted myself off, why, it's already an hour later. And I said, well, they're already out there now. I ain't no use going out there. They'll just have to do it without me. And so I waited to see what would happen. Well, it wasn't long after that they came flying up the road and pulled into the Dairy Mart there, and the girls was crying, and the boys were kind of pale-faced, and I came out and they said, Gene, come here. How did you do that? And I said, do what? They said, how did you create that light, that globe light, the one that come down the road right down in front of the car? And then the car died. It flooded out or something. I don't know what happened, but, and that noise, how did you make that noise? It was more than a bull roar. It kind of shook the car, kind of a humming, thrumming noise. And the girls were screaming and everything. And I had to kind of hold on. And it was really great. Thank you. You can do that anytime. And I said, I just kept my mouth shut. Sometimes it's better just not to say nothing at all. And so from then on, I never topped what happened when I wasn't even there. And that's how the ghost lights of Rio Blanco Canyon came to be. That's the truth.
I bet that's a true story, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, it's been a good evening of scary stories. I hope you have been scared. It is 9 o'clock. Double check in the chat and put any spooky and read all the spooky stuff that's been said. Donate if you get a chance. And we'll take 60 seconds. Anybody have any comments that they just are dying to say, or anything that they just have to say? Comments? I thought they were all great stories. TJ, let's start with you.
Gene, I loved that story, if only because not to make it about me, but I was supposed to tell a story tonight, and the event got canceled. And one of those was about Stampede Mesa, which is just about 13 miles from Crosbyton, Texas, and the Rio Blanco.
Well, that's Rio Blanco is the place where Quanah Parker led his tribe up the side of that canyon.
Yeah.
I mean, old men on travois and children and dogs, and somehow they escaped Mackenzie's cavalry and
Yeah.
got up on the high plains and took off across the prairie. And Mackenzie turned around and ran up the hill at up the side, and they were out there literally naked, exposed on the plains, and
Yeah.
the cavalry was after them. And the old men were saying prayers. The ladies knew this would be the end of it all. They were all about to get massacred. And suddenly a blue norther blew in. Now, I don't know if you know the West Texas area up there, but that
Yeah.
blue northers come in all of a sudden in just a few minutes. The temperature dropped and a blizzard came in. And those cavalry out there without any equipment turned around and ran back home so they wouldn't die. But Quanah Parker had tents and buffalo robes and fire they set up and had a nice camp out and then left the next day.
That's great. A little
True
bonus
story.
story.
True story.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Great stories, folks. Any last words, anybody? Don't see any hands raised. Richard, final words, and then we'll get to Amanda. I see you.
I just wanted to say it has been a beautiful evening. Beautiful evening. We have had a lot of fun. And remember, even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night may change to a wolf when the moon is full and the wolf bane blooms at night.
Spooky, spooky. Amanda, did you have something that you guys want to say?
Did you want to say something, Bradley?
Hey, Bradley.
Say
Bradley.
it. That's your grandpa, right?
Hi, Grandpa G.
And what? What did you want to say about his story?
I like the cat story.
There you go. I've been upped.
And your
I'll
story
take-
was
I'll
very
take-
spooky, and I really liked it.
I'll take you out to Rio Blanco Canyon at night, and I'll promise you'll be
I'm gonna be scared.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
guys.
buddy.
It was really awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, buddy. You can find the original version that's told from the boy's perspective called The Boy Who Drew Cats. It's by a famous writer by the name of Lafcadio Hearn. It's very good.
Cool.
Say good job. Yeah.
You like
guys.
books, don't you, Bradley?
Well, there you go.
And don't forget to go to Jefferson, Texas and stay the night.
Right? No. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, guys. Have a good evening. And
Thank
thanks
you
for
for
your
hosting.
donations, and thanks for coming to tell, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for hosting,
Good
Michael.
evening.
Excellent job.
All
Very
right.
good job. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Michael. Thank you so
Great
much.
program.